You've done a little bit of reading.
Right.
Have you? You read my page? You read my Enneagram page?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And I've taken several online tests, and they all came back with something different.
And this is what happens. This is what often happens. And I often get asked, well, this is all very well about the Enneagram, but how do I find out my type? It's a good question because I was told my type originally because I was displaying quite a lot of the unhealthy traits of it. So it was quite obvious. And the person who was teaching me on the NLP course was very knowledgeable. Except he didn't know his own type at the time. He thought he was a 6, but actually he's a 3. I'm pretty sure he'd agree with that now. I think 3, 4, and he was sort of saying 6. And I just use my experience. So I think online tests are useful. I think having a great understanding of your own patterns through spiritual practice, through things like meditation, having a sense of an awareness of your tendency that has a motivation to move towards something.
Okay.
Because they're all based on different core fears. So, to begin with...
Can I ask you a question?
Of course you can.
Does your Enneagram change over time?
You can integrate it so that you step into the opposite tendency, and so that's where your liberation is.
Okay.
Whereas every single Enneagram type in a default way is looking for something outside of itself. You've probably heard a lot of spiritual teachings and wisdom that say, anything that you're looking outside of yourself, as in the ego, everything good is outside. What's what the ego thinks. Everything good is outside.
Right.
And so the tendency and the fixation is on the thing outside. And they're looking for control outside of itself in the world. Or it's looking for security outside itself in the world. Or it's looking for love outside of itself. And every single time it does that, you will end up in suffering. Always.
Right.
Because whatever you find outside of yourself cannot possibly give you the sense of peace. Because you'll never have enough security. You'll never have enough control. And you'll never have enough love. And the reason we know this is that because we just have to look at celebrities, for one, and think, wow, what a wonderful life they must have. Because they've got all this money, or they've got all this attention, or all this love. And they must have so much control in their lives as a result of it. Now, we all know that celebrities probably are the most messed up types of people. Not all of them, that's a gross generalization. But a lot of them are, because their motivation is primarily to look for those things. Bruce Springsteen is a security type. Whoopi Goldberg is a control type. And Madonna is the love and approval type. So I've got all those 3 covered easily throughout the whole of humanity. Coming back to you, what do you think is primarily important? What's the thing that rises above the other 2? Is it more that your ego tends to look for love? Is it that it tends to look for control? Or is it that it tends to look for security?
I would say security.
Okay, so you know that because...
Because I've looked for the other things and they don't bring me what I need.
Okay, and when you look for security, how do you look for it? How does your mind do this for you?
When I look for security, it's just that my basic needs are met, having a house, having food, having, a job, a way to get to work, and making sure my children are taken care of.
Okay.
That's security to me.
Right. And do you find that your brain does this a lot of the time for you?
Yes.
And that other people have said, Cara, you're in your head a lot?
No.
Okay. Do you think that you're in your head a lot?
No.
You don't? Okay.
No.
Okay. And is this because you've done work on yourself?
No. It's because in my life, I tend to give a lot. And so my needs go on the back shelf while I'm putting other people's in first.
Okay.
And that's basically because of the line of work that I do.
Sure, but your Enneatype would have chosen that line of work, and that is classic other type. That's not the classic type of a 6, for example, that's a security type.
Right.
Or a 5.
Right.
I could almost go through them and say what I don't think you are. I could think that you're
Mm-hmm.
not a 1. 1s are perfectionists, and I can't see that running necessarily. You could be a 2, which is about putting other people's needs first because they're the carers. 2s and 9s are similar. So I would say, do you tend to zone out a lot of the time? Do you tend to sort of, when you put other people's needs first, what happens to you when you do that?
Good question. I don't exist. I'm in their world, not mine.
Okay.
So I don't know if you call that zoning out.
Okay. Do you find it hard to get in contact with your feelings sometimes?
When I'm dealing with other people, yes.
When you're dealing with other people. Okay. Okay. And what happens when you go to stress?
When I'm in stress, I'm on autopilot. I do what has to be done in the moment. I'm very, very good in emergency situations. Mm-hmm. I'm calm, cool, collected. I don't freak out. Mm-hmm. And I know what needs to be done. So in those types of situations, I do very well.
Okay, this is on my Enneagram Mentoring page. Let's use this. Let's just run past some of the core fears. Okay, basic fear of number 2, being unloved.
I would say to some extent, yes.
To some extent, but that's 2. Let's go to 9, basic fear of loss, fragmentation, separation.
I don't necessarily know that I would fear that because I've been through so much of that. Mm-hmm. I think I'm kind of conditioned to that.
Okay, so let's move back to 2. So the basic desire is to feel love.
Well, doesn't everybody?
That's interesting. That is viewers. That is very, very interesting because when we're seeing the world through our own Enneatype, we presume other people see the same. Now on some level, not everybody does have this. Yes, of course, everybody wants to feel loved, but not everybody will have that as their primary basic desire.
Okay.
Other people's primary basic desire would be about survival, and that their survival is more important than love. Now, of course, a love and approval type will think, yes, of course, we need to survive, but ultimately, if they don't feel loved on this earth, and I worked with a client this morning whose daughter is a love and approval type, it's quite obvious, and because she's been bullied in her life, she's ended up developing eating disorders and problems, and she's in psychiatric care. And that fact that she's not loved and doesn't feel loved, she doesn't want to live anymore. So she's got a security net. She's got a house. She could go and live at home with her mum and dad. She's not even of age. She's not even 16 yet. And yet she's trying to take her life a number of times because there's issues to do with, without breaking confidence, there's issues to do about who she is and how she can accept herself, and she doesn't. She's rejecting herself. So if she rejects herself, how can possibly other people accept her? Because she doesn't love and accept herself. And so she's trying all different types of ways to change herself, she can't. So she just scratches herself, or she hits her head against the wall, or she tries to knock herself out, or whatever. So, and she's on all these types of drugs. And unfortunately, if I could break in there and do some work, I would. Because I could see what's happening and see what's going on. And I think she's, I thought she was a 4, which is love and approval type, the individual. She's either a 4 or a 2, and if she's 2, she's going to, I don't think she's a 2. My intuition says she's a 4. I'm a 6, so I'm going to stick with that intuition, that inner guidance, not doubt. Stick with intuition. So if let's go with this 2. Ego fixation is flattery.
Well,
so Kari,
what woman doesn't like flattery?
Oh, here we go again. Yeah, well, absolutely. Of course. And that is very true. That is very true. But it's where the ego is fixated on flattery. So 2s will give and give and give and give and give. And they sometimes to the point that unhealthy 2s will give from an empty cup. And then they're absolutely shattered and they've crossed the threshold.
I would say historically that's how I've been, yes.
Ah, okay. And you've learned not to, so you've learned to fill up your own cup.
Right.
Okay, and did it feel selfish along the journey when you did that? Because it's like, well, Cara doesn't have any needs. Surely Cara doesn't. And then you finally learned to have some needs, and that it's okay to meet your own needs.
It didn't really feel selfish because at the time that I kind of started turning that around, I was a very angry person
And you didn't
after ending a relationship where I did give, and nothing in return.
Right.
So that's when it was kind of like, well, hey, what about me?
Did you kind of attract for a long time needy partners?
Yes.
Okay, that's classic 2 behaviour almost away, because it's a wake up call where you start to realise that I'm attracting these needy guys, and they need my help, and I'm going to rescue them, because they call the 2. Right. Look at that little smile, that little smile that goes, yeah, a rescuer, yeah. And you can sense that sort of like partly, because when you do that, you know that you can make a difference, but the ego thinks that if I rescue someone, this is the ego. If I want outside, if I want that guy, because when I get him, I'll rescue him, and when I get him, I'll put him back and I'll love him, and then he'll love me. It's all the ego of what it's doing. But you know that ultimately it doesn't work. And
it doesn't.
It doesn't. Yeah, and you've learned, and you've had painful lessons about that, haven't you, Cara? Yes,
absolutely. Yes.
And this is the evolution. I interviewed a 2 before you, actually. So it's interesting. I've interviewed 2 twos for my inspirational stories, and she was a 2, and she got trapped in a marriage where the guy was 27 years older, and she was the skivvy, basically the dog's body, or you know what dog's body is?
Yeah.
Okay. So she really had no needs, and her role was mother and wife, and mid-40s she was ready to kill herself. She was ready to drive into a brick wall because she couldn't take it anymore. And she actually was doing a job that they allow people to do counselling, and she got onto that, and she was nearly at the point of suicide, and somebody on the counselling course said, well, what do you want? And it was like, there's a bit of a wake-up call of, she didn't realise she had any needs.
Right.
And so the liberation for 2s is to stop looking outside of itself. And the tendency is the need for connection. So it's a want for connection. I want to connect, because when I connect, then I can be. And the ego thinks that through connecting, it will have some sense of, let's go back to this again. So some gratification from that, and then it will feel more whole. But the tendency with 2s often report that inside of them it feels like I'm going to use another English term, a polo mint. Do you have polo mints in America?
No.
Okay, a polo mint is like, a rubber ring with a hole in the middle.
Right. Okay.
And 2s often report that it feels like inside of them it feels this incompleteness.
Right.
And you're agreeing with that. Okay, so it feels like there's a hole here. And it feels like someone else outside of yourself, you've got to find someone or something to connect to, and then you will feel whole. And it's that thing of, fine, I want, because when I get there, I'll be. And the liberation for 2s and their life journey is to begin to fill up that hole themselves.
And I think that's where I'm at in that.
Yeah, so, I know that because I picked that energy up, and that's why when we started doing the inspirational story, you were saying lots of good things, and I was resonating and going, yeah, this woman's journeyed through a lot of stuff. She's been through a lot of stuff, and she's got this message, and I could tell that you were relatively evolved within your own Enneatype. Now, a lot of people say to me, well, do you need to know your own Enneatype to evolve? No, you don't. But it's a tool, and it's something that can help you. And through understanding yourself, you can have a greater self-acceptance. And through books such as these, and there's plenty more out there. That's the Enneagram Made Easy, which is a very simple read, and this one's a bit more comprehensive. There are plenty of other books. I've just been very 6-like and loyal and stayed to my 2 books. But I still read that 8 years on, and it's turned yellow. And it's beautiful because it talks about things like... talks about how to transform. It gives you tools and practices that help you evolve your type. It talks about moving into your essence.